Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, we discuss a 2024 stainless steel limited edition of 300 pieces from Sinn of Frankfurt, Germany. This is the Pilot's Chronograph. Now, it's called the 156.1E. There is a 156.030 model that is a little bit more contemporary in its design. This, however, is the discontinued 156.031 edition, which is crafted to provide a combination of modern and nostalgic features. So in stainless steel, it is a tribute to the Heuer Leonidas Bund watches. The Bund was a reference 1550 Heuer Leonidas chronograph made by the Swiss supplier for the German armed forces. Over time, Sinn, led by former pilot and watchmaker Helmut Sinn out of Frankfurt, received the service contracts to sustain those watches in German military service. As a result, over time, parts, including dials, were replaced in order to keep the watches serviceable. And so the Heuer Leonidas 1550 Bund over time became the Sinn 155. As the evolution of the species progressed and Sinn was able to start making watches from scratch with its own brand, the 156 debuted in the 1980s and served for at least another 20 years after that. So the watch we have right here is sort of a fanciful, imagined vision of what a 156 might look like today had it continued to age through the years following its German military service. And the watch is a fascinating piece. As you can see, 43 millimeters in diameter, it's 15.8 millimeters thick, lug tip to lug tip, just the case, it's 51.1 millimeters. If we measure end length to end length, the total distance across the wrist is 56.9 with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. On the wrist, it's massive. You really feel the weight. It's a substantial thing, Panzer-like, less perhaps evocative of German aviation and more of ground-bound armor, but there's a reassuring solidity to this watch that feels distinctly Teutonic. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters circumference, I think we're at the limit of what will work with the bracelet in place. Take the bracelet off, you could probably wear it on a 15 centimeter circumference wrist, but with the bracelet, you want to be 16 my wrist or higher. That said, it doesn't feel super thick, and it will fit underneath a jacket cuff. The bracelet is a substantial piece. It's nicely melded to the case by a conforming lug that matches the downward slope of the lugs, and the conforming link also matching the curvature of the case, so it's a nice clean integration. As you can see, case and bracelet are media blasted, which has the advantage of being relatively easy to refinish when it goes back to the factory without removing material. Where you have satin and you have polish, you need to grind down and essentially level the metal to the depth of the mark to make it look fresh again, which reduces the metal. But with media blast, you just blast it again to get that surface. You don't have to remove metal in most cases. You can see that this is an overbuilt bracelet with removable links fixed by hex keys. Those are there because you can apply more torque to keep it secure without a risk of stripping it out. Now we've got a single fold thick gauge steel deployant here with a clamshell lock, and then inside you can see we've got a fold-out dive extension. So while this is not a dive watch, the idea here is more likely that you're going to use it over some sort of aviation jacket and wear it on the outside. Could you wear it over a dive suit? Sure, but just remember this is not a dive watch. The bezel turns both ways. And then we have these little pairs of divots where you can use your strap tool to dismount the spring bar and change the anchoring point to fine-tune the fit. And you do have a few more removable links on the other side. Taking a look at the case itself, it's simple. Sinn has a set of somewhat recessed pushers to limit their vulnerability. We do here have a screw-down crown and water resistance of 100 meters, so it is a stout 100. You can absolutely swim with this. We have Sinn's distinctive captive bezel, where the bezel is actually held to the case using screws, meaning you can't accidentally snap it off on impact. The case is stainless steel and standard stainless steel here, but the bezel is actually made of tegamented steel, which is a carbon-diffused steel that is essentially as hard as ceramic, but Sinn has gone one better, using a DLC application, what they call hard black, which is even harder than the tegament itself. So you've got a super hard coating on a super hard substrate, which means that unlike most DLC, which goes on top of soft steel, this hard coating on hard steel will not cause an eggshell crack as the material beneath collapses and causes the brittle black to fracture. With the top coat being super hard but also brittle, you need a hard substrate to prevent that eggshell collapse, and that's exactly what Sinn has done right here. Now you can see it's been deliberately faded to give it an aged aesthetic, and so this has a little bit of an aged vintage reference 156 look here. It is bi-directional. You can turn it in both directions, line it up with the syringe style. It's really a baton syringe hybrid minute hand, and you can see how you can time two events concurrently using the bezel but also the chronograph. Taking a look in the dark, big bezel pearl, easy to read. Also interesting, the bezel gives you a 0 to 60 minute count-up time, but then so does the chronograph. Sinn takes a 7750 style architecture. It's either a Valjoux 7750 or the Sellita SW500 version, but they make conversions to essentially make it their own movement, the SC01. Now the original 156, after the Heuer-Leonidas years, the original 156 was designed not quite from scratch, but sufficiently to receive a new movement, the Lemania 5100. And so people who remember the original 156 remember the Lemania's centrally mounted chronograph minutes register. And so you can see here what Sinn has done is they've re-engineered the 7750 to have a central minute register that reads 60 minutes at a time rather than the conventional sub-register with 30. The other thing that you can see right there is that it's instantaneous jumping, which is a nice feature. The dial is high contrast, though we have a little bit of photina. It doesn't impede comprehension, and being matte finished, there's no glare. We have right here a date that shows you the preceding and succeeding, and so the idea here is not so much that you can tell the date if the primary date is covered, but it's designed to look like a aviation barometric altimeter. So if you see the Colesman window on a conventional aviation altimeter, that is exactly what they're going for here. They're going for the aesthetic of an analog instrument on a vintage aircraft's flight deck. So it's a Colesman altimeter style window. Now, additional features that are inherent in this movement include stop seconds, so you can stop the watch and set it to a reference time. There's also a quick set, so you can rapidly cycle the date, and it is a rapid quick set, so you can do that quite quickly. Automatic winding with unidirectional action, characteristic of the 7750 architecture. 42 to 44 hours of power reserve, 25 joules, 4 hertz beat rate, and it features a combination of a very crisp and well-tuned cam function selector with an oscillating pinion, which is a type of lateral clutch that has almost no stagger or extraneous motion when you engage it. Now, it's used as a space-saving measure on a 7750 architecture, but it's making a comeback on high horology chronographs these days. Glashütte Original, Richard Mille, De Bethune, F.P. Journe, they all use the oscillating pinion now for its space-saving ability, but also its precise engagement. A lot of folks won't know this isn't a vertical clutch. There's a lot to love here. If you love this watch and you love German watches and your Lange can't go swimming or flying, this is the answer. Finish your German collecting theme with the Sinn Pilot's Chronograph 156.1E.